to our new video here about the Pythagorean Theorem. Now we're actually going to use this to find missing lengths. We've done a lot with proofs and kind of figuring out, kind of understanding what's happening, but now we're going to actually use it to figure out missing lengths. And this is really what the Pythagorean Theorem is used most for. So first thing, sorry, I got to get my video here working. The first thing we'll look at is trying to find just a few examples of what's going on here. So as we know in our different triangles we've looked at, whenever we have a right triangle, we have legs, and those legs are the things that form the L in the triangle. The other thing we want to do is always be able to locate where the hypotenuse is. And to do that, you can just take your right angle and go right across from it, and that C is always your hypotenuse. Hypotenuse kind of sounds like a strange word there, but hypotenuse is how it's said and spelled there. And then we have legs and legs. Okay. So the fancy kind of wording of all of it is, in a right triangle, the sum of the squares, the lengths of the legs, is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. And that's where we've seen so many times where we draw the square there, and those two squares add together to make the bigger square. It's a terrible picture, sorry about that. So let's look at a first example here. Let's just make a note of ourselves to locate that hypotenuse. Once again, you go right across from your right angle. Right across from the right angle. And another little part to know, and will help you figure a few things out here, is that it's always the longest side. It's always the longest side in your triangle, in your right triangle. And other types of triangles don't have hypotenuses. I think you can actually do the plural of that as hypotenuses. Only right triangles have hypotenuses. So we'll go ahead and look at doing and setting up this problem here. Start off with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And a and b are going to be the legs. So the legs in this figure are the two that make the L shape there. And those triangles can kind of be rotated around lots of different ways. So make sure you always just look for what's connecting those the right angle there. So 9 and 12 are a and b. And it doesn't really matter which one's which. So we'll go ahead and just say 9 squared plus 12 squared is equal to c squared. And we're going to go ahead and solve this out. 9 squared is 81. And you feel free to use your calculator if you need to. 12 squared, hopefully is another one you know, 144. And we're just kind of flowing and showing our steps nice and neat underneath each other. We'll combine 181 and 144. When we add those together, that should give us 225. And at this point, to solve this part, it's asking us what value squared gives you 225. So we can't just divide it by 2. What we have to do is actually take the square root. So at this point, I'm going to put a little note here and say, I want you to write this down too. Take square root once you have it at that point. So the square root of both sides, square root of c squared is just c, because c times c is c squared. And the square root of 225, you can actually just type that into your calculator. Let me go ahead and pull up my calculator just so you can see where everything is. Mine will look a little different than yours, but it should do the trick here. To find the square root button, if I turn mine on, we're doing the square root, so you hit the second button on your calculator, and it's going to be right above the x squared key. So there's the 7 key, and kind of diagonally across there, right there, the x squared key. So right next to the comma on my calculator here, and that pops up the square root symbol. You can hit 225, close the parenthesis, and hit enter, and you get 15. Now it's not always going to be a whole number, but this time it was a perfect square, so it actually worked out. So the square root of 225 was 15, and that is the length of our hypotenuse here. Now if you look, you just want to double check. If we kind of put this back up here in the triangle and say that that's 15, we just want to visually double check to make sure that that is the longest side of our right triangle. So 9, 12, and 15 is our longest side. So we're good. Next part, we'll find a missing leg this time. This is, I guess, if you had to say which one's harder, this would be the one that maybe more people make mistakes on, but we'll still start with our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And just the hardest part about it is identifying which one we're trying to find. Here we're trying to find a leg. We're trying to find an actual leg, so we're going to do 8 squared as the a value. We're just going to leave it as b squared for the leg, and our hypotenuse is the one that goes on the right side of the equation for c, so 24 squared. And we've kind of already written it down there too, but I just kind of rewrote it just to help you explain a little bit more here. So when we do that, 8 squared is 64. We don't know what b is yet. And 24 squared is 576. And now we have to get this b squared by itself. To do that, we have to get rid of this 64 by subtracting it from both sides. And then we'll get b squared is equal to, we do that subtraction, 576 minus 64 is 512. Make sure you have a calculator next to you and are typing this stuff in. I don't want you to just be writing down exactly what I'm going to write. Make sure you're trying it out and seeing that it actually works for yourself. And now we take the square root of both sides. And this time I do want to show you on the calculator again the square root of 512. Oops, wrong button. When we do the square root of 512, we actually get 22.627417. And I'm just going to take the first round to the nearest tenths is okay. So look at that 6, look right next door to the 6 at a 2 there, and the 2 doesn't tell me to round that 6 up. So I'm going to say 22.6. So back to my problem here. This one will be 22.6. Oops, sorry, I didn't quite do that right. I should have written down, oh boy. Anyway, b equals 22.6. So then if we kind of go back just to double check, we want to make sure that our hypotenuse is actually the longest side again. So if we kind of go over, 22.6 would be back in this picture up here for b. And out of 8, 22.6, and 24, 24, which is the hypotenuse, is that longest side. So that works out. That's how it should be. Alright, go ahead and flip that page over. We'll look at a few more examples of just kind of setting it up and solving it out here. 2 more examples. One's going to be finding the leg, one's going to be finding the hypotenuse. What I want you to do is push pause and try to plug in your numbers into the formula. So we'll write a squared plus b squared equals c squared for both of these. Push pause and tell me where the numbers go. When you're done, push play and we'll finish it up. Okay, in this one we're finding the hypotenuse, which is a c value. So a could be 24, b could be 18. So we'll do 24 squared plus 18 squared equals c squared. Now if you flipped around the 18 and 24, you can keep doing this problem with me and you'll find that actually we get the same thing. It doesn't matter which one's the legs or which legs are which. So 24 squared is 324. 18 squared is, and make sure you're doing this with me here, 576. And we have c squared. So now we'll add these together. Just to show you that we can not just rely on a calculator all the time here. We get 900 actually equals c squared. And then that number means what number multiplied by itself is 900. And if you think about that there, I mean, like think about just 9. 3 times 3 is 9, so it's going to be something to do with a 3. It's actually 30. So 30 times 30 there is 900. And let's do that check. Let's double check that C, that 300, or sorry, 30, if we put 30 in here, that should be the longest side because it's the hypotenuse. And it is. Last example. This will be a quick one. Just showing you how it's done here, calculating it all out. And I want to just show you that, if we didn't have a B here, maybe this wasn't even given you as anything, that makes it a little harder to set up. Because it doesn't tell you specifically what the value is, but you know that this is a leg. So it would have to not be the c part. It would have to not be the hypotenuse. So 8 squared is the hypotenuse, 3 squared is a leg, and we just don't know what that other one is. So when we solve this one out here, we got 9 plus b squared equals 64. And now we're trying to get b by itself. So we have to subtract 9. And that gives us b squared is equal to 8. No, I lied. That's not right. What am I doing? 64 minus 8. Wow, 56. Sorry. Just looking at the wrong piece of paper. 56. And then when we do the square root, we got to figure out what the square root of 56 is. So b is equal to, and we do that square root of 56. Look at the rounding here, 7.48. So that 4.8, I'm going to round it to 7.5. So we'll say 7.5 for our b value. And if we put that back into that picture, just to double check again, 7.5 is pretty darn close to the hypotenuse, but still the hypotenuse, the 8, is bigger than both of the other sides. So we've done it correctly. When you come in tomorrow, we'll look at some more just practice problems with this, putting some application problems together. We'll see you guys tomorrow.